I'd say if you feel like, boy, we're moving along okay, but I don't see where I'm going to pinch another inch. That's the reason why I think God came up with a tithe. I think for most people in the world, though I'm starting to wonder now about Americans. I mean, it's astounding amount of money that's being made by a certain percentage. For most Americans, a tithe definitely is something to shoot for. And to shoot for it, I'm going to make a sacrifice. It's going to be a big sacrifice to get there. I'm going to try. And that's the reason for most of us is a tithe. But what I know about, what I read about, there's an awful lot of people who obviously need to go past that and not be legalistic about a tithe. That's all I was trying to say. Okay, so the tithe is sort of a poor man's cross, which most of us are. Most of us are poor enough that the tithe is the cross, so we'll go after that. But don't forget, it's not the 10%, it's the cross that's the key, the sacrifice. Or as Dr. Jonathan Edwards once put it, he says, when people say, I can't afford to give, what they're really saying is, I can't afford to give without burdening myself. But the Bible says, bear one another's burdens. And if you say, I'm not going to help bear your burden without burdening myself, he says, how do you bear somebody else's burdens without burdening yourself? You have to burden yourself to bear another burden. So he says, look at the needs of the world. Look at the needs of the church. Look at the needs out there. You need to give till some of the burden other people are experiencing is falling on you. Then there'll be peace and justice in the world if we were all doing that. So, yes, right here. I'm sorry, I missed the close ones. Oh, sacrificial giving? Yeah, well, actually, for all of 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 said that Jesus Christ's sacrifice is the basis for our giving. Yeah, I mean, it's still 2 Corinthians. Probably the easiest single place because it's long. If you read the thing and just get the gist of it, it starts off by saying, now, brothers, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. Out of the most severe trial, their overflowing joy, and even in their extreme poverty, it welled up in rich generosity. For they gave not as much as they were able, but they even gave beyond their ability. Now, however, and he's lifting this up and saying this is like Jesus. Now, I don't know how you define beyond their ability, but it's got to at least mean sacrifice. It seems like it might mean worse, but it couldn't mean less than that. Does that help? See, in other words, when they say you should give beyond your ability, and he closes it up and he says, just like Jesus, who sacrificed, you must give beyond your ability. You say, what does that mean? Well, you could you could interpret it as meaning I need to impoverish myself. I don't think that's what he means. But it could mean less than sacrifice. It could mean less than cutting into my lifestyle. He says, I am not commanding you, but I want you to test the sincerity of your love that you do the same thing. Now that's this is great fundraising, by the way. When you read this, he says they gave sacrificially. Secondly, he says, I'm not testing you, but I want to know about the sincerity of your love.
But he said he doesn't command it.
Oh, no, that's right. He says, however, if you love the one who did this for you, you will do this. But he says, I'm not commanding you. Right. So that's much worse than a command. It's far worse than a command. What he's trying to say is, the way you know that you believe Jesus died for you is that you will give beyond your ability. He says, that's all I'm looking for. I'm not commanding you to do it. I'm just telling you this is what will happen. That is far worse than a command. Yeah, it does mean it's going to be a stretch. Even though, he says they gave beyond their ability, but they gave in joy. And there is something to that.